The smell of freshly baked bread wrapped around me like a soft blanket as I balanced the paper bag against my hip. Morning light spilled over the city streets, and the noise of car horns and chatter filled the air. Alphas in suits rushed by with the same clipped steps, their scents brushing faintly through the crowd. Spice, smoke, cologne. I kept my head low, tugging the brim of my cap lower. Blending in was easier that way. "Daddy, wait for me." Elzer's voice rang out, bright, high, and warm enough to cut through the city noise. I turned just in time to see my son, my little ball of chaos, racing toward me, his tiny sneakers slapping the pavement. His curls bounced wildly as he clutched his plush bear under one arm. "Careful, baby," I called, smiling despite myself. "Don't trip." He slowed down, grinning up at me with those soft brown eyes that always reminded me of someone I tried so hard to forget. Someone who still lived in the corners of my memories. Deep voice, steady hands, and eyes like ice when they looked too close. Devin. The name still hurt to think. I shook the thought away. "Come on, Elzer," I said, adjusting the bag. "We need to drop these off before my shift." He nodded and took my hand. His fingers were small but warm, grounding me in the present. For 4 years, it had just been the two of us, and I'd worked hard to keep it that way. No alpha, no questions, no risks, just us. The cafe bell chimed softly as I pushed the door open. The warm scent of roasted coffee beans and sugar filled the air. The place was busy today, business alphas talking over laptops, betas carrying trays, a few omegas like me weaving between tables with careful smiles. I worked here part-time, long enough to learn that quiet, steady jobs were safest for someone like me. It wasn't much, but it paid rent, daycare, and bread. That was enough. Or it had been. Until today. The moment I stepped behind the counter, the air shifted. A scent, crisp smoke and clean rain, slid through the room like static. It was faint at first, then stronger, coiling around my lungs and making my instincts jolt awake. My body stiffened. No, it couldn't be. "Chris." My manager's cheerful voice broke through my panic. Perfect timing. "The alpha who purchased our cafe is us today." The alpha. I turned slowly. She stood beside a tall man in a dark grey suit. Broad shoulders, sharp jaw, cold, piercing brown eyes that scanned the cafe with the kind of focus that made everyone else shrink a little. For a second, my heart stopped. Devin Gray. My past. My mistake. My son's father. I almost dropped the bag. "It's good to have you on the team, Mr. Gray," the manager chirped, then turned to me. "This is Chris, one of our best omegas. He'll show you around." My pulse thundered. Devin's gaze landed on me, and something flickered in his eyes. Confusion, then realization, then something sharper. He said my name quietly, almost tasting it. "Chris." I swallowed hard. "Mr. Gray," I managed, trying to sound calm. He didn't look away. "It's been a while. Too long. 4 years of hiding. For years of pretending that night never happened." I forced a smile that trembled. "Yes, sir. Welcome to the team." Our manager, oblivious to the tension tightening the air, laughed lightly. "I'll leave you two to get acquainted." As she walked away, silence settled like a blade between us. Devin stepped closer, his voice low but steady. "You disappeared." My stomach twisted. "I moved," I said quickly. "It's a big city." He tilted his head slightly, studying me like he was piecing together a puzzle. "You look exactly the same." His eyes flicked briefly to my wrist, to the small bracelet Elzer made for me. His scent spiked, faintly curious. "Almost. Mr. Gray." "Devin," he interrupted, his tone quiet but firm. "You used to call me Devin." I froze. His words hit me harder than they should have. My throat felt dry, my skin prickling with old memories. Laughter, touch, heat, regret. I turned away before he could see the crack in my expression. "I have to start my shift." But as I stepped past him, his scent shifted again, faintly wounded, faintly sharp. And under my breath, I whispered the words I hadn't dared in years. "He can't find out about Elzer." The next few hours dragged painfully. Every time I looked up, I caught glimpses of him. Devin leaning by the counter, giving quiet instructions to the staff, speaking with that same calm authority I remembered. But now, instead of drawing me in, it terrified me. He wasn't supposed to be here. He was supposed to be miles away, living his successful alpha life, forgetting the nameless Omega who slipped out of his apartment before dawn one winter morning. Not here. Not now. When my shift ended, I practically fled into the back room. My hands trembled as I untied my apron. "Daddy!" I jumped. Elzer stood by the door, holding a drawing in one hand and a cookie in the other. One of the baristas must have let him in while waiting for me. I forced a smile. "Hey, baby." He ran into my arms, cookie crumbs falling down his shirt. "Look, I made you a picture." It was us, two stick figures holding hands, and something that looked suspiciously like a tall man beside us. I frowned. "Who's that?" Elzer giggled. "The nice man who gave me juice." My blood ran cold. "What man?" Before he could answer, a voice came from behind me. "Chris." I turned slowly. Devin stood there, no suit jacket now, sleeves rolled up, eyes steady but unreadable. The world seemed to tilt. "You left without saying goodbye," he said softly. "4 years ago. And now you're here." I held Elzer closer, my heart racing. "I don't know what you're talking about." He took a step closer, lowering his voice. "Don't lie to me. You know exactly what I'm talking about." Something inside me cracked. I had to. "Why?" "Because your world was too sharp for me. Because I overheard your father saying omegas were distractions. Because I saw your engagement notice the day after you said you cared. But I couldn't tell him that. I just said, it doesn't matter anymore." Devin's eyes searched mine, his scent tightening with something almost painful. Then slowly, he glanced at the small head tucked against my chest, Elzer's brown curls, his tiny hand clutching my shirt. Recognition didn't fully show on his face, but suspicion did. "Chris," he murmured, voice barely above a whisper. "Who is he?" Panic surged. "My son." Something unreadable crossed his face, a mix of shock, anger, and disbelief. But before he could say another word, my manager called from across the hall, breaking the moment. "Mr. Gray. Meeting in 5. He didn't move. For a long moment, he just looked at me, eyes dark and unreadable. Then he said quietly, his voice low and heavy with promise, "We'll talk later." I didn't breathe until he was gone. And even then, my heart refused to calm down. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't over. It was only the beginning. The evening air smelled like rain and roasted nuts from the street vendors. City lights blinked awake one by one, reflecting in puddles that dotted the cracked sidewalk. I held Elzer's hand as we walked, the grocery bag swinging lightly from my other arm. My body was tired, but my heart was a storm that refused to calm. All day, Devin's voice kept echoing in my head. "We'll talk later." Those words carried weight, like a promise or a threat. I wasn't sure which. Elzer hummed a little tune beside me, completely oblivious to my panic. His tiny steps skipped on the pavement, his curls glowing golden brown under the streetlight. "Daddy, can we get ice cream?" he asked suddenly, pointing at a bright shop across the street. "Please." I smiled weakly. "You already had a cookie today, mister." He pouted, tilting his head. "Just one scoop." I sighed. I could never resist that face. "One scoop," I said finally. His delighted squeal made a few people glance our way, and I couldn't help laughing softly. Moments like this, simple, ordinary, were what I lived for. No alphas, no past, no fear. Just my son, and the tiny world we built together. But as I turned toward the crosswalk, I felt it again, that scent. Clean smoke and cool rain. Sharp, steady, unmistakable. My heart clenched. I turned, and there he was. Devin. Standing a few steps away, his tall frame half lit by the flickering glow of a street lamp. He wasn't in a suit this time. Dark shirt rolled at the sleeves, collar open, expression unreadable. The wind brushed through his hair, making him look both softer and impossibly distant. "Chris," he said quietly. My grip on the grocery bag tightened. "You shouldn't be here." I needed to talk. "There's nothing to talk about," I said quickly, tugging Elzer closer. "You're my boss now. Let's keep it that way." But Devin didn't move. His eyes, those pale grey eyes that once watched me like I was something rare, locked onto mine. "You disappeared, Chris. You didn't even leave a note." My chest tightened. "I had my reasons." "Reasons," he repeated, voice low. "That's not good enough." The way he said it, sharp, controlled, made my instincts flare. Alphas always carried authority in their tone, but his wrapped around me like heat and command, and I hated that it still made me react. "Devin, please," I said softly. "You don't understand." "Then explain it to me." Something in his voice cracked for just a second. I heard hurt beneath the anger. But before I could speak, Elzer shifted at my side. He looked up at Devin, frowning. "Why are you talking to my daddy like that?" Devin blinked, taken aback. I placed a hand on my son's shoulder. "It's okay, baby. He's just." But Elzer's lips were pressed tight, eyes narrowing in fierce concentration. the same look he got when trying to open jars by himself. Then suddenly, before I could stop him, he lunged forward. Elzer. It happened in a flash, a blur of small movement and startled gasps. Devin stiffened. Elzer bit him. Right on the leg. For a split second, no one breathed. The only sound was the distant honk of a car and my child's tiny, angry growl. Elzer. I yanked him back instantly, heart slamming in my chest. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. He didn't mean he. Devin's face was frozen in shock. Then slowly, he looked down at the little boy now hiding behind my legs, glaring at him like a lion cub. He bit me, Devin said, voice somewhere between disbelief and amusement. I'm so sorry, I repeated, mortified. He thought he misunderstood. I wasn't hurting you, Devin said softly, crouching down to Elzer's level. His voice changed then, no longer cold or sharp, but deep and gentle. The kind of tone that could calm even a trembling heart. Hey, little man. It's okay. Elzer peeked out from behind me, his lip quivering. You were making Daddy sad. My throat burned. Devin's expression softened completely. Was I? He asked gently. Elzer nodded. I don't like it when Daddy's sad. Something flickered in Devin's eyes. Something that looked dangerously close to guilt. He smiled faintly, his voice low. You're very brave, you know that? Elzer's head tilted. I am. Devin nodded. Most people don't even try to bite me. A small laugh escaped me before I could stop it. The absurdity of it all, standing in the rain, my son having just bitten a powerful alpha, was too much. Devin chuckled too, a sound I hadn't heard in years. It was quiet, but real. The kind of laugh that once made me fall harder than I should have. When his eyes lifted back to mine, they weren't cold anymore. Just searching. He glanced at Elzer again, studying him closely. The brown curls, the dimple on his left cheek, the little frown that matched his own. The recognition was faint, but unmistakable. He knew. Or at least he suspected. But to my surprise, he didn't say anything. Instead, he turned back to Elzer, still crouched low. That was very protective of you, he said softly. But next time, maybe, use your words instead of teeth? Elzer blinked, processing that seriously, then nodded. Okay, but only if you promise not to make Daddy sad again. Devin smiled, really smiled this time. It softened every hard line in his face. Deal. Pinky promise? Devin held out his little finger, so big compared to Elzer's, and without hesitation, my son wrapped his around it. The sight made something inside me ache and warm at the same time. For years, I told myself I didn't need anyone else. That love was dangerous, and Alpha's even more so. But seeing them, Devin and Elzer, made that lie tremble at its edges. The air felt gentler somehow, as if the world itself had paused to watch. Devin finally stood, brushing invisible dust from his trousers. You have quite the defender, he said, looking at me with an amused glint in his eyes. I sighed, still flustered. He's protective. Protective, Devin repeated, his smile deepening. Sounds like someone else I used to know. The words hit me square in the chest. I looked away quickly, afraid of what he might see in my face. We should go. Chris, he called as I started to turn. I paused. He looked at me for a long moment. No anger now, no pride. Just quiet understanding. I don't know what happened back then, he said softly, but I'm not walking away this time. My breath caught, but before I could answer, Elzer tugged my hand. Daddy home? Yeah, baby, I whispered. Home. We walked away, the sound of rain beginning to fall around us. I didn't look back, but I could feel him watching us. The Alpha I once ran from, standing under the lamplight with a small bite mark on his leg and a strange, unreadable smile. And somehow, I knew this wasn't the end of it. Not anymore. A week had passed since the bite incident, and life should have gone back to normal. But it didn't. Because Devin didn't disappear this time. He started showing up, not in an overbearing, pushy way, but in small, unexpected moments that chipped away at the walls I'd carefully built. The first time was at the cafe. It was early morning, the smell of roasted beans and caramel syrup filling the air. I was behind the counter frothing milk when I saw him through the glass door. Tall, steady, and very out of place among pastel menus and chatter. Double espresso, he ordered when he reached the counter, eyes holding mine a second too long. Still drinking that, I muttered before I could stop myself. His mouth twitched. Still remembering then. I quickly handed him his drink, ignoring the heat creeping up my neck. But he didn't leave right away. He lingered at one of the corner tables, typing on his laptop, sipping slowly like he had all the time in the world. The next day he was back. And the next. And then one afternoon, when I picked Elzer up from daycare, there he was again, crouched beside the playground, helping Elzer fix a toy truck. "Mr. Devin helped me," Elzer announced proudly when he spotted me. I froze, my heart lurching. "Mr. Devin?" Devin stood and gave me a faint smile. "We met by accident. He's quite the negotiator. Convinced me to stay until the wheels worked again." I wanted to be angry, to tell him to stop crossing lines, but the way Elzer grinned, eyes full of joy, softened something inside me. After that, Devin became a quiet, constant presence. He'd drop by the cafe just before closing, offering to carry boxes or fix the flickering light that had been broken for weeks. He even replaced the leaky pipe under the sink one rainy afternoon. "You don't have to keep showing up," I said one evening, leaning against the counter while he wiped his hands on a towel. He looked up, a shadow of a smile on his lips. "Maybe I want to." His tone was calm, but something deeper hid underneath it, something almost wistful. That night, after putting Elzer to bed, I couldn't stop thinking about how Devin had laughed when my son threw foam at him, or how naturally they seemed to fit together, like they'd always known each other. It scared me more than anything. The next week, it happened, the thing that shattered my last defense. I was sorting receipts at the cafe when Elzer ran in from the play corner, waving a piece of paper like a prize. "Daddy, look what I made." I smiled tiredly. "Another spaceship?" "No." He puffed his chest. "Our family." I froze. On the crayon paper, 3 stick figures stood under a blue sky. One had my name scribbled above it, the second was labeled me, and the third, tall, broad-shouldered, drawn with a smile that looked suspiciously like Devin's, had Mr. Devin written on top. I stared, heart stumbling. Devin, who had been fixing the shelf nearby, turned when he heard my sharp inhale. His eyes landed on the drawing, and I saw his expression falter, a brief flicker of emotion breaking through his usual composure. "That's us?" he asked gently, crouching beside Elzer. "Yeah," my son said proudly. "'Cause you help Daddy, and you play with me, and you fix stuff. So you're part of our family too." The simplicity in his voice cut through me like a blade. Innocent, unfiltered truth. I looked at Devin then. Really looked. And for a heartbeat, neither of us spoke. He didn't laugh. He didn't tease. He just smiled faintly, his gaze soft in a way I hadn't seen since before everything fell apart. "Thank you, champ," he murmured, ruffling Elzer's hair. "That means a lot." When he looked up at me, his eyes said something words couldn't, something that made my chest ache. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept picturing that drawing. That smile. That sense of almost family I'd told myself I'd never have again. A few evenings later, it rained again, soft at first, then pouring so hard it drowned out the city noise. Most customers had already gone home. I was wiping tables while the thunder rolled outside when the bell above the door chimed. "Devin." I blinked, surprised to see him soaked through, rain dripping from his dark hair. "You're still open?" he asked, shaking off his jacket. "Barely." He smiled and helped me pull the chairs up. The cafe was dim, just the warm light over the counter and the rhythmic sound of rain. For a while, we worked in silence, quiet but comfortable, until I realized he was watching me. "What?" I asked softly, without looking up. "I remembered," he said. The words made my hands still. "Remembered what?" "That night," he whispered. "Before you left." My stomach tightened. I didn't want to talk about that night. The one filled with broken promises, too much heat, and the kind of goodbye that never really ended. "I thought you'd moved on," I said, forcing my voice steady. "I tried," he said simply. "But when I saw you again, and him," he hesitated, eyes darkening with realization. "Chris. Elzer. He's." The silence stretched heavy between us. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. "He's yours," I said quietly. "You always were too smart not to see it." Devin's eyes closed briefly. When he opened them again, emotion flooded through, shock, guilt, wonder, all tangled together. "If I'd known," his voice cracked. "If I'd known, Chris, I'd have searched the world for both of you." The sincerity in his words hit me like a wave. I'd spent years imagining this moment, the truth coming out, but I never expected it to sound like that. Raw, regretful, real. Tears stung my eyes before I could stop them. "You weren't supposed to find out like this." He stepped closer, slow, careful, like approaching a frightened animal. "Why did you leave?" "Because I was scared," I whispered. "You were rising fast, surrounded by powerful people. I was just an omega with no place in your world. When I found out I was pregnant, I couldn't risk it, the press, the rumors, the control. I wanted him to be free. Devin exhaled shakily, eyes glistening. Free from me. Free from that world, I corrected softly. Not from you. We stood there, the air thick with rain and truth. For once, neither of us had the strength to pretend. Then a small yawn broke the tension. We both turned. Elzer stood by the counter, rubbing his eyes sleepily, holding his tiny stuffed bear. Daddy, he mumbled. Can we go home together? The words hit deeper than any confession. Devin's eyes widened slightly, then softened into something fragile and luminous. I saw the choice in that look, a man deciding, in that single instant, to stay. I crouched, pulling Elzer into my arms. Yeah, baby, I whispered. We're going home. As we stepped into the rain, Devin followed quietly, umbrella held above us. For the first time in years, I didn't tell him to stop. Maybe it was the way the storm wrapped around us, or maybe it was the warmth I felt standing between them. My son, and the alpha who once broke me. But in that moment, under the soft hum of thunder and city light, it felt like the beginning of something new. Something that could finally heal. It's strange how quietly a life can change. One day, you're running on coffee bills and fear, praying your little boy doesn't ask why there's no Papa in the picture. And then suddenly, there he is. Devin. He didn't push his way into our lives. He just slipped in, like sunlight through a half-open curtain. Weeks passed, and before I realized it, mornings started looking different. Daddy, Mr. Devin burned the toast again. Elzer's laughter rang through the apartment as I stepped out of the bedroom, still half asleep. The smell of something very blackened filled the air. Devin stood at the stove, frowning at the toaster as if it had personally offended him. It's not burned, he muttered. It's just extra crispy. It's smoked, Daddy. Elzer giggled, waving his spoon dramatically. I couldn't help laughing. Let me handle breakfast before you destroy the kitchen, Alpha. He turned, mock-offended. Excuse me, I can handle breakfast. Sure, I teased, pointing at the plate. You just made charcoal toast a national delicacy. Devin chuckled and moved aside, slipping an arm around my waist. Fine, I'll be your assistant. His voice dropped lower, soft enough that only I could hear. You always were better at making things feel like home. The words hit deep, gentle, sincere. I didn't reply. I just focused on stirring the eggs, my hands trembling slightly for reasons that had nothing to do with the pan. Behind me, I could feel his warmth, steady and close. When I turned, he was watching me with that same quiet awe, the one that made my chest ache every time. Elzer broke the moment, clapping his hands. Can we go to the park after breakfast? Sure, I said. If Papa Mr. Devin doesn't burn the car on the way there. Hey, Devin protested, laughing. That was one time. I burst out laughing, and for a moment, everything felt exactly how it was supposed to be. Easy, loud, happy. The park became our ritual. Every Saturday, the three of us would go, me with coffee in hand, Elzer with his little soccer ball, and Devin carrying way too many snacks. The neighbors had started talking, of course. Two men and a child tend to draw eyes, especially when one of them was a high-profile alpha whose face sometimes appeared on business news. But this time, I didn't care. I didn't shrink when people stared. I didn't lower my voice when Elzer shouted Daddy, or when Devin leaned close to whisper something that made me blush. For years, I'd lived like a shadow, invisible, forgettable. But now, I walk through sunlight. One evening, we sat together on the living room floor. The rain outside tapped softly against the windows. Elzer was coloring, while Devin read over some documents beside me. Mr. Devin, Elzer said suddenly, still focused on his crayons. Devin looked up. Can I call you Papa instead? The question landed like a spark in the quiet room. My head snapped up, eyes wide. Devin's expression froze for a second, then slowly melted into something so raw and full that it stole my breath. You want to call me that? He asked, voice barely above a whisper. Elzer nodded, serious. You take me to the park. You fix my toys. You hug Daddy. That's what papas do. For a moment, Devin didn't move. Then he set the papers aside, pulled our son gently into his arms, and said, his voice thick, I'd be honored, little one. I had to look away before my heart burst. My throat burned with tears I didn't want to shed. Later that night, when Elzer was asleep, Devin found me by the kitchen sink. You're crying, he said softly, brushing his thumb across my cheek. I laughed weakly. You noticed? I notice everything about you, he murmured. The way he said it, quiet but certain, made my chest ache. I never thought I'd hear him call anyone that, I confessed. I thought I'd have to fill both roles forever. Devin took my hand, pressing it to his heart. You did. And you did it beautifully. But now you don't have to do it alone. That was the moment the last bit of fear slipped away. It happened one night, simple, soft, inevitable. Elzer was already asleep, curled up between his stuffed bear and a blanket that had seen better days. The apartment was quiet except for the low hum of the city beyond the window. Devin stood by the balcony, his white shirt open at the collar, looking out at the skyline. The golden light from the lamp brushed against his skin, and I caught myself just staring. He turned, catching my gaze. "You're staring." "Maybe," I said, smiling shyly. "It's rare to see you not in a suit." He chuckled. "I guess I've traded boardrooms for bedtime stories." "That's an upgrade," I said. He walked toward me, slow, deliberate. "You think so?" "Definitely." My voice came out quieter than I meant it to. When he reached me, his hand came up to cup my cheek, thumb brushing the edge of my jaw. His scent, rain and smoke and warmth, wrapped around me like home. "I don't want to rush you," he said softly. "But, Chris, I love you. I've loved you since the day I lost you. I just didn't realize it until now." The words hit like thunder. Not loud, but deep enough to shake everything inside me. Tears filled my eyes again. "You shouldn't say that unless you mean it." He smiled, eyes gentle. "I mean every word." I took a shaky breath. "Then I guess it's my turn." I placed my hand over his chest. "I love you too, Devin." I never stopped. He leaned in then, slow and careful, giving me every chance to pull away. But I didn't. When his lips met mine, it wasn't wild or rushed. It was quiet, steady, full of everything we'd lost and found again. When we pulled apart, I was smiling through my tears. Took us long enough. He laughed softly. Worth every second. Months later, the world looked brighter. Devin's work schedule changed. Fewer meetings, more mornings with pancakes and chaos. Our apartment felt too small sometimes, but always full of laughter. We still argued, about the thermostat, about bedtime stories, about how much sugar Elzer could have. But it was the kind of arguing that ended in laughter and stolen kisses. One Sunday morning, we went to the park again. The sun was warm, the air full of children's laughter and the smell of grass. "Daddy! Papa Devin! Look!" Elzer shouted from the swings. We turned just in time to see him kick off the ground and soar higher than ever before, joy lighting his face. I laughed, clapping my hands. Devin caught him midair when he jumped off, spinning him until they both fell onto the grass, laughing breathlessly. It was such a simple sight. Two people I loved most in the world, tangled in sunlight and laughter. But it felt like everything. When they finally came over, Elzer climbed onto Devin's shoulders, shouting, "We're the strongest family ever." "Yeah," Devin said, smiling up at him. "We are." I slipped my hand into his as we walked toward home. The breeze carried the scent of rain and coffee, familiar and warm. For the first time in years, I felt whole. As I watched Elzer giggle and lean down to press a kiss to Devin's hair, my heart swelled. The little one who once bit an alpha out of fear now clung to him with love. And the cold alpha, who once ruled a company, now ruled only one thing. The small, perfect family he'd nearly lost.